We now have a quorum, and thank y'all for being here this morning. We will call this meeting to order at 10:12. So thank y'all very much for being here. I have been advised that we do not have any citizens wishing to speak this morning. Before I ask for consideration and approval of the minutes, I will tell you no. I'm not going to say I'm better looking, but I'm not Steve Montgomery, who normally chairs this committee. Steve is in Austin, and he asked me to fill in. So we will hopefully get through this with two former chairmen of the board sitting in this meeting. I should have all the help I need. So again, if there's no other discussion, I would entertain a motion for the approval of the March 23rd minutes, which have been attached and was on the portal for your review. Second. Have a motion second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank y'all very much. Which we will move right along to the CFO report. And Sharon, I'll ask you to come up and good morning. You don't have her name tag. No, Chuck advises he's taking your name tag down.
Okay.
Well, good morning.
So good morning. If you are following along on your board portal, Well, someone else did that. I'd love to take credit, but my
Are you suggesting that somebody put that on the screen or somebody did the financial report?
Well, it depends on how it goes.
Okay, good. I'll reserve that answer.
That's what I say, is that's probably one of the better answers. Have the minutes reflect, she takes full credit for that. That was great.
I think I may need some new batteries.
And I thought I knew some politicians.
Yeah, well,
Does anybody have batteries back there? Oh, just turn it on. I thought, okay.
That was a nice shot.
Wow.
That's a great quote,
Okay.
just turn it on.
Just checking how quick they are. Thanks, Bill. Okay.
that's why you have a chief
That's
operating officer.
Anybody else want to do anything before I start? Because we are live streamed. That
That's
never
right.
leaves my mind at these moments.
All right.
Okay. All right. So, if you're following along, I'm on page 14. That could have gone better. All right. Correct. Thank you. We did have a really busy month in the hospital for March. If you notice for admissions by month, we were about 5.5% above where we had thought we would be. If you, oh boy, this is not going to go well this morning. Okay. So you can see we were above budget by about 5% in the top left. We had over 2,400 admissions for March. Our patient days were about 3.3% ahead at over 14,000 patient days. Our case mix was slightly below where we had anticipated, and our length of stay was right on, just slightly above where we had anticipated it to be.
What's case mix?
Case mix is really the acuity of the patient, where it's a measure of acuity of the patient. So a lot of things might impact that, but it's an impact of where the coding, the discharge coding ends up. It's an average of all of the discharges. So if we have a lot of traumas, for example, that CMI is going to be higher. If we have a lot of lower acuities over the period of the month, that CMI is going to be lower. That's a very simplistic example.
Do you know which scoring system they use? I mean, there's dozens out there. You know, for trauma we use injury severity score. I just wonder what one we're using.
Again, this is the one that I believe that Medicare defines a lot of what is done by our discharge coding teams.
Okay.
So. On an outpatient basis, we were also extremely busy. You can see that our emergency department was 14% above where we had intended to be. We had just shy of 11,000 emergency department visits. That put us on average at 354 visits per day for March. That was the busiest so far we had been this year. And looking back over the last 3 years, we've only had 1 or 2 busier months. And if you also look down at urgent care visits, we were also extremely busy in urgent care, adding about 176 visits per day in the UC. Our clinic visits were also extremely busy. We were only about 3% under budget there, and the total outpatient visits were over budget. So when we look at the income statement a little bit, you'll see an overage in our total revenue on our income statement. So when you look at some of our other key statistics, our observation days were slightly below. That kind of goes hand in hand with our inpatient days being so over. You can only have so many patients in beds. Our inpatient surgeries were over. We had 560 inpatient surgeries. Our outpatient surgeries were slightly below at over 800. Our psych patient days were very strong. If you notice that blue bar, even though we were slightly below budget, we were still extremely busy in patient days. Our psych clinic visits were the highest this year, and our psych emergency visits were the highest this year as well. And hospital, partial hospitalization days were about where they were last month. Our FTEs per adjusted patient day, which kind of again tells us where, based on all these volumes, how did we staff, was favorable. We were at 5.9 FTEs compared to a goal of 5.96 FTEs. So we were slightly under. And when you look at our rev cycle metrics, our days cash on hand is 316 days compared to prior year, we were about at 310. And our net AR days has dropped to 49. And that tells us about how long does it take to, from when a charge is actually produced, how long does it take on average for us to collect that and turn it into cash. So it shows up as cash on hand. So 49 days, pretty healthy. It is good. When you look at an industry average, 49 would be considered very healthy. When you look at our payer mix, again, payer mix does not change a whole lot, but if you look at our self-pay and our connection piece of the pie, those represent our patient population that don't really have a payer source. Our commercial, the 13%, a lot of those are ACAs with large deductibles when they walk in our door. And then Medicare and Medicaid comprise a really large slice almost half of the pie on the other side of that graph. Our connection enrollment continues to creep up. If you remember, again, the ACA enrollment in December and January had a lot of impact as a lot of our enrollees fell off, and then we did continue to see that kind of creep back up. Last year we found our sweet spot at about 42,000 enrollees, and this year we'll see where that is. We're starting to come back up at about 500 members each month, but we did pick up about 1.5% this month. So when you look at our performance for March, the medical center was able to produce income from operations of about $511,000 compared to a $1.1 million budget. Again, the story on the top side of the income statement is volume. Our inpatient gross revenue was about 4% ahead of budget. Our outpatient was about 2% ahead of budget. So both categories this month were strong. We haven't always seen that in the past months. And we also had a favorable payer mix of about $300,000 net. So, but most of that pickup of $1.1 million that you see in that top line for net patient service revenue was due to volume. A couple of lines down, when we look at the dish and the waiver revenue, we have a deficit of $833,000. Again, that's our $10 million UC revenue. I'm not accruing that each month because we don't expect to get that, and I don't want to have a surprise at the end of this year. So that net patient service revenue volume is helping make up for that this month. In other operating revenue, you see $1 million overage. That's due to our PAP drug programs. And if you drop down towards the bottom in supplies, you'll see an offsetting overage in our pharmaceutical expense. So that's kind of a wash on the bottom line. Salaries are over, along with contract labor, to take care of those patients that were here. But again, our FTEs for the month, where it ran about 5.79 compared to the 5.96. Again, the graph that I showed you earlier is year to date. So we're still good year to date, but we were really efficient as far as labor goes for the month. Purchase service is about $618,000 over. A large component of that is what we pay our physicians to take care of those connection patients. If you remember in the graph, we pay professional fees to physicians to see those self-paying connection patients that are here in the hospital, as well as those that have the connection coverage for primary care. So the 618 is that, and a lot of that went to inpatient coverage for anesthesia and hospitalists, as well as those physicians that reside within a claim. We talked a little bit about the supply overage. About $1 million of that $1,369,000 is for the pharmaceutical PAP program. And the other part is due to the volumes and the surgical overages that we saw this month. So at the end of the day, we were able to produce about a $511,000 income from operations. So year to date, we are at $3.947 million compared to a $6.8 million budget. We have a shortfall compared to budget of about $2.87 million. Again, the largest part of that shortfall is up in the waiver revenue, where We're about 5.3 million year-to-date. Again, about half of that $10 million that we do not expect to receive this year in fiscal year 17.
And Sharon, just for clarification, I know members of the Finance Committee have heard this several times. Obviously, at the time the budget was presented, correct me if I say this wrong, at the time the budget was presented last August, we anticipated that $10 million would be received for the UC for the compensation. After the budget was presented, we then found out, based upon things that happened outside our control and all, it's not like we lost $10 million. We lost the potential to get that additional $10 million based upon actions elsewhere. And this, by far, is the most conservative way to do it, because we're not just waiting to get down at the end of the year and say, oops, we didn't get it, we know we're not going to get it. So you're taking that $833,000 a month, where we're taking it monthly. So like you say, theoretically, if we'd have got the 10, obviously this number wouldn't be a minus 2.9.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. I mean, we based the 17 budget on the information that we had at the time, and it was just before we closed
Right.
fiscal year 16 that we found out that some of the very complex formulas that drive the allocation for uncompensated care caused a shortfall back in 16.
Right.
So for the 17 monthly accounting, I just want to make sure that we don't put ourselves in that same
Certainly.
situation.
We see this as the most conservative way to do it. We address it monthly is what we're doing, so
Yes.
thank you again for that clarification. Yes.
Two questions.
Yes, sir.
First of all, where are we on the bill that potentially has an impact on the IGT? Has we heard anything out of Austin? Has that come out of committee?
It did, it came out, they went ahead and Representative Guerin decided to carry the bill. The bill was heard in the County Affairs Committee. It went through the County Affairs Committee and is waiting its time before the House floor.
Okay.
There has been some debate about a Senate sponsor, but, oh, I'm sorry. I now understand that there is a Senate sponsor for the bill as well. So that is moving through a process.
Are the public hospitals collectively supporting that bill at this point?
It only is restricted to Tarrant County.
Or just us?
It's only Tarrant County. There is, I believe, a bill for Dallas County, only for Dallas County, but they've kept it in its area. So the other public hospitals are not participating in an activity.
Okay, so the next question, Sharon, is knowing that that 10 million didn't come in this year and that we anticipated it, what do you anticipate for next year?
We'll have a few more months before we have to lock down the budget. So we'll be doing our calculations as we can.
I would suggest, and I don't want to get in the realm of a CFO by any stretch of the imagination, but I would imagine that particular funding source would probably be the same, because the reason it changed $10 million were the debt components to Bexar County and the debt components to Dallas County. So those formulas, and you correct me if I'm wrong, were adjusted for a different pay for that debt portion, and none of the other public hospitals had a debt portion. So the pie's only so big, their debt went up, the numbers changed. If our debt went up, the numbers would change in that regard. The pie's only so big.
So do you think,
Surprise.
do we know yet what net impact the transfer would have on Tarrant County, on the hospital system, if that?
No, because they haven't come out with rates yet. In fact, Sharon and I have looked at 3 different sets of rates, and it still hasn't been approved by CMS. So we keep looking at what those rates are, and pretty much every other week we get a little bit of a different variance of rates. So I think that will change a bit.
Go ahead, Ralph, I'm sorry.
And I might be asking the same thing Trent just said. So the $2 million that you just mentioned, the deficit that we see now, is it going to stay at that level, or each month will we see it increasing?
Well, every month I'm going to continue to not accrue that $833,000 that will make sure that at the end of the year I've accounted for that $10 million. So I don't over accrue at the end of the year. So we will be right at the end of the year.
So the
Every-
10 million that you're speaking at is not going to escalate. It is 10 million.
It's
We
10
know
million.
what that is for
Yes.
this fiscal year. Sharon won't come back and say, now the state has adjusted it in another manner. It is 10 million for the year.
Well, yeah, the reason I asked that, because I didn't want us to have selective amnesia. When it gets down to the budget, and she says we got a $10 million deficit.
Right.
No.
We all of a sudden forget about
No, you're that's the reason I'll raise that, Ralph, you're exactly right. And that's totally different from obviously what's going through. I'm not a legislative expert or a legal expert, but back to Trent's question, we don't know what we may, assuming it does pass, we don't know for sure exactly what we would be receiving once we get into that. I know there's been some initial discussion. And Trent, as you recall, I think the IGT percentages have changed over time. I don't think at this point in time, the formulas have even been addressed yet, Robert.
Not for that
for
subject.
two totally different subjects.
Two
Two totally different things. But the main thing is, Ralph, yes, we don't want to get down at the end of the year. It's the most conservative way. And like you say, then, oops, this is the most conservative way to look at it. So again, Sharon.
I'm trying to make sure that we have some collective opinion of all of it, because we've got the $10 million waiver issue, then we potentially have an IGT
Right.
issue.
Correct.
So together, they're both going to have to be something we look at for next year.
Yeah, and what gains do we get off that and what the situation is? And we'll probably know that a little more clearly. First of all, we'll know it clearly when CMS finally approves it, if they do, if the legislation ultimately passes, and then what rates HHSC will ultimately go with. Fair?
And we would know that before we get to finalize the
Finalize
budget.
budget.
So
Gotcha.
that should be a little bit more solid by then, Trent.
Thank you. Go ahead, Sharon, thank you.
Thank you. For a claim, from their statistics, and I'm on page 25, their billed encounters were about 3% below budget. Most of that was in primary care and in geriatrics. Those are two areas that we continue to recruit physicians. And as those physicians are recruited into those areas, you'll see those numbers go up. Their payer mix does not look completely different from the medical center, but they are, it is a little bit different because of the primary care nature of a claim. And then from their income statement, their loss from operations this month was 1.5 million compared to a budget of 719 loss. If you look at the top side of the income statement, most of the loss is generated in the net patient service revenue area. In March, because of spring break, 140 providers were actually on PTO, causing them to be non-productive, versus about 90 providers in February. So when you look at the budget was actually kind of a straight line budget instead of accounting for those, because we didn't really have any history for a claim. It was a new company. So if you look at the 5.2 million compared to the budget of 5.9 million, the $736,000 variance was really because of that unproductive component in March. We were able to make up for some of that in the other operating revenue line item. You see a $273,000 overage. We did receive a check for some meaningful use revenue back from fiscal year 16 performance. Some EMR monies did come in to help offset that.
See this thing recovering, Charlie, this fiscal year or not?
I think two things, Trent. One is, as you know, this was the base year, and there were a lot of assumptions made when this was presented to the Commissioners Court last August. Yes, I think Sharon, Robert, and the entire staff are looking at these numbers because a lot of these contracts came over. We didn't get all the physicians at the same time. Those are not meant as excuses. I think when we get into the full budget presentation, I've asked Robert and Sharon to really kind of zero in on this. I mean, obviously, a claim gets a lot of the attention. As Sharon and I have spoken, the truth of the matter is, it is the district. You know, it's certainly a very, very important piece of the overall financial, but they're going to do a special kind of correct me, Robert and Sharon, but I've asked them, they're doing a special analysis. When we do the budget, we need to find out what assumptions were made, what was reality, because there were a lot of assumptions made in that budget. And so, again, that's what Sharon and them been asked to do, and we should have that when we get into the budgeting process, discuss a claim. Again, it's certainly a part of, a very important, integral part of the budget, but focusing on the overall budget, so, yeah.
If you look at,
Sharon, excuse me one second. I wish my answer had been real quick, Trent, say yes.
No, and
It would be, but I think
Trent,
there's some,
I we'll be talking about that. I'm not going to wait until
yeah.
the budget presentation in August. We'll be talking about where do we expect a claim to end up the year in
Right.
fiscal year 17, much before August, probably sometime next month. We've just got to get the claim executive committee on board, and then we'll be doing a session with finance committee. And then what will the budget impacts be in 18 as far as recruitments? Where do we expect that 18 number to look like? And then by the time we get to the August meeting requesting approval, this board will have a really good expectation about what that budget's going to look like for a claim and how that will interact with the 18 budget for the medical center.
That's
So-
a good question, because
Right.
We're in a situation now where we don't even know what our zero base is
Right.
with the claim. Until we get staffed, until we get a pattern set up that we can count on, it's difficult to budget, obviously.
Correct.
So my question really was, do you think we'll have enough constants in the equation by the end of this budget cycle to have a better predictor for next year?
Yes.
Yes, I think that's the yes answer, Trent. We're in the process of that, and I'm not going to speak for Chuck, but as you know, Chuck chairs a claim executive committee. We had a meeting this past Monday, and then obviously that finance piece was discussed in there too, Trent. So there is things happening that'll be coming back with the executive committee of the acclaim asked to be done. So all that's coming. So go ahead, Sharon. Thank you.
On the operating expenses, some of the contract labor, you can see the 118,000 overage. A lot of that is due to physician coverage and neurology as we start to try to find permanent staffing for that. And then there are smaller overages in some of the purchase service due to some of the comp plan expenses and legal. In the supply area, we had some expenses at May Street for some security and IT. And again, the bottom line was a loss this month of $1.5 million. Were there any other questions on a claim? Okay, that concludes my report, unless there's any other items on the financials.
Any particular questions for Sharon?
Any particular questions for Sharon regarding presentation or any additional numbers? I will say, Sharon, you may take this moment and I'll call for approval of this, but in fact, let's call for approval, and we're going to come back and talk about maybe the budgeting process that you and I spoke about. So if there are no additional questions for Sharon on this matter, I'd call for a motion on item number A, approval of the financial numbers. Have approval, motion by Trent. Second by Chuck, or Dr. Ziegler, one Chuck. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank y'all very much. Sharon, you might just explain, I know many of you have already received, normally we kind of have a workshop in May each year in anticipation of the budgeting process. I've talked with Steve and he'll be back and spoken with Sharon. Sharon has now been through one full budgeting cycle. So she and her staff have a better feel for where we are and obviously can help put together where we're going financially. So I guess the question was, till we get some of these acclaimed questions, Trent, finalized, just to have a meeting and talk about the process that Sharon gave us a pretty thorough presentation last year. It didn't make a lot of sense to go through the same process because all the board members that we currently have serving on the board were here last year. So they have been through the process, they've had the opportunity to come to finance, and they're here at the board. So we probably are going to wait till we do have some more specific information, and then we may have in finance part of your continuing to advise and working on the budget. I think it's going to be a budget in process as this number comes back in. Did I kind of say that right, Sharon, or is that kind of how you see when you and your staff start getting things, the pieces put together, that'll come back through finance? As far as us just having a off-site talking about the process and how that information, it's going to be pretty much collected identically the way it was last year into this budget.
Yeah, I don't foresee any major changes in the functionality of the budget. We probably do need a few more weeks to try to condense down a presentation as far as to you guys at the board level on a claim. When we close March, that gives us 6 months worth of information, which is kind of a natural cutoff from an accounting standpoint. So looking at a claim, I think from everybody's standpoint, that's what we would want to talk about when we spend time on planning for budget. That's the natural piece of our strategy for budget 17 or actual 17, and how that's going to flow into budget 18. So even though we had a title on the May board meeting, that may just be more of a normal board meeting, and we may just spend 30 minutes to an hour at a future finance committee meeting, which was kind of my style last year. I don't want anything in that approval in August and to be a surprise for you guys when we get to that meeting. And hopefully that budget presentation will only take an hour to an hour and a half. When I started, we had a Saturday 4-hour session kind of appropriated, and that, you guys should, that should not be the first inclination that you have or the first view that you have of what's coming down the pike for that budget year. So we'll be talking about budget either in finance committee or the board or wherever we need to, but we'll be gathering and talking about that as we have better information.
Yeah, the two words I heard, Sharon, we don't want any surprises, so this will be an ongoing process. We're not going to get down there, like you said, Ralph, the last minute and say, whoops, we've got about 10 million, or we want to be sure that we vet it all the way through. So it's going to be more of a process this year, and a lot of it will be obviously in finance as we go through this, and obviously the board will certainly. And I guess I have general counsel sitting on my right. Sharon used the word, a normal board meeting. Could I get a legal opinion on what a normal board meeting is?
No
Anyway.
special agenda items,
Okay.
maybe I should say.
Thank you. Let's move along then on item number B. Sharon, I know you're already there. Do you want to go ahead and proceed with item number B?
Sure. The next few items, we have 3 managed care contracts to present for your approval. Item B is additions to our Aetna relationship. This one will add Aetna Auto, which a lot may come through our emergency department. A rental network, which this expands, it expands a geographical network for a lot of times for people outside of Tarrant County. It's often referred to as a WRAP network, and the workers' compensation products. This will really help reduce some of the single case rate agreements that we have to do after the fact. So Again, these are all Aetna products that expand our relationship with them.
Any questions on item number B? If not, I consider a motion.
Move approval.
Motion by Reverend Emerson, second by Dr. Weber. All in favor say aye. Sharon?
Item C is Rockport Community Care Facility. And I might say that these next two agreements are actually driven by a claim. These are agreements that are extremely important to the orthopedic physicians and the outpatient setting, workers' comp. But, our strategy is to make sure that those patients have access to JPS ancillary products as well as any inpatient admissions that might arise from that. So Rockport Community Care, this is for workers' compensation.
Any particular questions on the Rockport community questions for Sharon? If not, I entertain a motion. A motion by Dr. Weber. Second by Mr. Petty. All those in favor say aye.
Item,
I'm just joking, obviously, Dr. Weber's heard all these because you sit through all this in the executive meeting.
Yeah, but I'm not like
Go ahead, Sharon. I'm sorry, I don't understand.
no, that's all right. Item D is Prime Health Services. Again, this is workers' comp primarily. The rest of the 5, group health, auto, indigent care, and their Medicare Advantage products is a package deal by the workers' compensation through the Acclaim Ortho is what's driving the signing of this product.
I know all this was on the package and on the portal, so I know you got a chance to review it. It's time to discussion, I entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Approval by Reverend Emerson. Second. Second by Dr. Zimmer. All those in favor say aye. Thank y'all very much. Sharon, thank you for your presentation and all of that. So, Wayne, I think you're up there. Thank you very much. Item number E.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I'm here to request approval of the release of budgeted capital funds for a environment upgrade in Trinity Springs. There is a replacement of patient room doors, a replacement of bathroom doors, as well as an upgrade to the seating for those environments. This is the last phase in a multi-phase process that we've been going through. The building was obviously intentionally built for a psychiatric environment, but things have changed a little bit in the 30 years since it was designed, and we're trying to keep up with some of the new expectations and some of the new opportunities to improve patient safety in that area. It is going to be done rather than vended out to a contractor, because all of you probably have a pretty good idea that we are regularly at capacity in Trinity Springs, and I can't even imagine what it would be like to try and close a whole unit and allow a group to come in and do all this work in mass as they would normally do. We're literally going to close off one room at a time. And that just became cost prohibitive to use a vendor to do that. So we're using our own skilled tradespeople to make these changes, and they'll be more patient with our limited access to the space and the process that requires. Again, this is all budgeted, doors, seating, and beds as well. I forgot to mention that. There's a bed component to this as well.
Again, Wayne, thank you very much.
I know it's a budget item, thank you very much, and second of all, obviously you're sensitive to our patients' needs, so by doing that, I appreciate you taking that also. So, is there any questions for Wayne? I did hear you say the building was designed 30 years ago?
Yes, sir.
30 years, okay. Just want to get that in there. Yes?
Question. What is the difference between the doors that we were going to put in and then these doors?
So, well, it's the doors that we have as opposed to these doors. And so the doors that, the primary issue with the doors that go into the room is they are regular hinged as opposed to a piano hinge. And so this is all about ligature points primarily. And so if you have a continuous piano hinge, there's no way to insert something in there and close the door and create a security issue around the hinge or to loop something around the hinge. The Also, the door into the patient room is going to have a door and a door, so that if the door were to happen to be able to be barricaded, you could open an inner door that opens into the hallway, which typically patient room doors aren't allowed to open into the hallway because of the traffic flow that goes in there. So you would have basically a miniature door that you could open and access that room if it were barricaded shut and closed. Other facilities have an emergency plan where they go through the wall to get into that room next door, but given that our construction is all cement block, that's just not a practical alternative for us. So we need to have a way to access that room should a patient bar the entry. The bathroom doors, the intention is to slope the top and alleviate the ligature point from the bottom by modifying the profile of the door and also changing from a secure latch on the bathroom door to more of a roller ball, so that pressure would cause that door to open and release, and there's no ligature point at the top or the bottom to be able to attach say a torn sheet to, and with a knot around it where you could create a secure point to attach something onto.
Anything else, Warren? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move.
I've got Roy. Dr. Lowry, anyone second?
Second.
Second by Reverend Emerson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Thank you. Dr. Lowry, thank you very much. I know to make a quorum, you've got a schedule. Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. That takes care of item number E. We would then move to item number F. And is Frank here? Oh, there he is. Dr. Rossini, Frank, if you'd come up on item number E. Oh, item number F. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm presenting the library services agreement. It's an agreement between the district and UNT Health Science Center Gibson Library. The monies under cost are approved in our FY17 budget. The purpose of this contract is to improve the library access for our educational and research missions. And there's a variety of bullet points under there that give more definition to that, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Others that are members from this, or others that participate with this library in terms of funding?
It'll just be us initially, but there's other interested parties. That library has a special national designation, and so it's highly desirable. Thank you for the question.
So this is the first time we've done this?
JPS? Yes.
Dr. Rossini, this also went through the educational committee
Yes, sir.
that we have also. I think it went through there. So, again, if there's any questions for Dr. Rossini, this is the time to ask him. David, one thing I might ask, I spoke with Ms. DeBose could not be here today due to an illness in her family. I spoke with her last night. And DT, there's maybe some question, again, Frank, I know you handle the financial side and all that. There may be some question as to making sure that we're compatible with our IP address and all that, and you kind of heading up that area. You might just speak to that if you wouldn't mind. I know it's not part of, Frank, sorry about your president.
You don't want to have an IT discussion with me.
But I thought,
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So actually, Michelle Whitehead, who is the technical librarian over at UNT, is going to be coming over here on Tuesday of next week to do a full technical test of it. But basically what has happened is they have branded their library with JPS branding. They have their UNT library, and then they've set up a JPS library. So when our students or our faculty or our physicians want to go to it, it looks like JPS. And on the backside of that, we've set up some proxy services and some security services so that when it hits their library, they know that that connection is coming from JPS. And so that IP address will be designated on our end as the JPS library. And so when they get that request, it immediately technologically sends it out, and it looks like it's sitting on our premise.
good deal. Well, again, that kind of covers the financial side and the IT side, so thank y'all both for your presentation. Any other questions for Frank and/or David? Get Warren, yes.
Why do we have a physical library? I mean, everything that I do legally, I have subscriptions to various databases and it's everything. Our law, the A&M Life has a law library, but it's just so you could say we've got a law library.
Warren, turn your
Turn your mic on. That's a good point.
That's just one of the things that people sometimes look at to evaluate law schools. Is this just something we're doing so we can say we have a library? I mean, what's the benefit of this over the actual electrical subscriptions to various databases and periodicals that I'm assuming that we'll find in this library?
Thank you. Totally perfect question. So other hospitals have had to answer this question, and the value of carrying the responsibilities of a physical library are falling outside of hospitals, and they've partnered with universities, specifically Reno and Miami most recently have done that. For our relationship, what it does is it unburdens us from the obligation of carrying paper, and we have availability to their online services, which are, again, have a national designation. So we don't need to carry all this. I think you're exactly correct. This allows us to take and have an online service for all of JPS employees.
So
We
we
couldn't do this
currently-
without this.
So we currently have a physical library where?
Basement.
In the basement of this building? There's
Yeah.
Learn something. Okay, so we have this big paper library.
Not
Big, you would not say big if you saw that.
Library.
It is a
physical library.
yeah, it is a physical library, but I don't want people having the impression that it is big. It is not.
Do you like luxury? Yes. So you got this library.
Yes.
And we're going to replace the library, or we're going to have 3 people that man this library that we currently have manning it, or help me understand what's changing?
The magic behind a library is based on the subscriptions that they have, the way those subscriptions are enabled electronically, and these subscriptions aren't books being delivered and journals being delivered. It's not paper.
Right.
It's the online subscriptions, the way they're enabled and integrated, and then with the online portal, that all works seamlessly. To do that, you need to have library IT, you need to have library business ops to help with that. We just don't have those services, and we can't get from here to there, which is a modern library that you're experiencing in law, without this support.
So we currently have, how many employees do we currently have manning our library?
3.
Okay, so we have 3 right now, we're going to change, and so we're basically outsourcing that.
We're going to have 3 still. That doesn't
Still
change.
have 3, but from what I gather here, we're working with other people, so we're paying other people to handle that. I mean, are they still going to be 3 employees of JPS?
There will be 3 people in that library. There'll be employees of the Health Science Center. That's what this contract does.
But we currently have that, though. It's
Yes.
not a change.
It's not changed.
So the $190,000 we're spending here is going for what?
It's to support some library services for people there. And the other service, without getting into the weeds, is that a modern library offers the subscriptions that I just discussed. And then all this has to be directed toward our patient care. If it's not touching our patients, we have to call question why we're doing this. So clinical librarians follow the rounding teams and other organizations that teach and have an education mission. We'll be able to do that. So they'll be not just buried in the library down in the basement, literally, behind books and journals and doing searches, but they can be out enabling the knowledge at the bedside with the teaching teams.
Have we had a policy that we decided that we're going to have a library like this? I mean, is it real value day to day to the doctors? To anybody?
It's incredible value. It's not small, it's incredible value.
Mr. Nora, there's also some accreditation issues tied back to the GMA program, and in order to meet those accreditation standards, you've got to have access to certain library, and so this ties into part of that as well.
Well, I understand.
In terms
Yeah,
of
your point is not whether you have a library or not, it's whether you actually have a physical spot. And I think it's part,
Unlike law schools,
Right.
it's still required to meet accreditation standards. You got to have physical books, which hopefully that's going to go away someday, which is unnecessary totally. But that's not the case in medicine. Most of it's now electronic.
and I think let me attempt to try to answer that and create some level of sensitivity with employees as well. We're not firm that the whole physical space is critically important. Although there are some doctors that come and use that space, there are community and citizens that come and use that space that want to look up various things. So there is some use of it. It is certainly less, but I think where the question lies is where the future is and how we begin to transition that library to the modern library it needs to be. And that's going to be online, and that's going to be the digital aspect of those library and the periodicals that it has. So we've gone from having a physical library that was, we thought, very underutilized to moving it to where it needs to be, but we didn't go from 0 to 60, we went 0 to 45. Concerned with the people that we did have using it, transitioning out, and then also dealing with employees and knowing what we needed to do to have the most effective online service and who we had. So there's a sensitivity to what we have and transitioning out of that, and at the same time maintaining what we think we need to have. But I think this is a discussion that we can have in the near future again that says, okay, now that you made your transition, where do you go next without having a physical actual presence? Does that help?
Right, it's just it's the same question that I always have. I can spend $1 on what I would call real hands-on healthcare or fluff. And a book for a professional is generally fluff if I can replicate it infinite number of times digitally and make it available to all at almost no cost. And
Yeah.
so I'm assuming that's the direction we're going.
Yes.
I just see 3 people in a basement and I go, $200,000 for what? I could be actually taking care of people in a very direct way, as opposed to this, which has some value. I'm not saying
Well,
it's no value.
and where I would
value.
want you to look at this issue is not the fluff side of it, it's the transition side of it. It's moving from an actual physical place that either and was underutilized, but still utilized.
Correct.
And then figuring out how we transition out of that. Your arguments are not any different than ours. The question is do you want to continue to spend the $190,000 to sort of transition that process? And that's where we fell as an administration, to transition that process, going from physical to online. We know that's the future. We also know establishing relationships with whomever it is that has a nationally recognized library that has access to different medical records and a different medical documentation than what we currently have has been phenomenal, whether it's TCU, North Texas, UAT, anybody else.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I'm assuming there's a bunch of costs to the library that I don't see here that's based on the electronic subscriptions that we're part of, or maybe not. I don't know. Is that true or is that not true?
It's true, and it's been budgeted for years like that.
Right.
So we've transitioned the cost for paper and journals and some online subscriptions to a far more robust online subscription service.
Okay.
Within budget, all within budget, or maybe even a little bit under, because we collaborated and got better agreements.
With that,
No, thank you.
No,
Yes,
good
yes, Ralph.
questions.
Dr. Sigler, do you have a question?
No, just that there's still nursing students, medical students, residents that are doing projects. Some of the stuff, I don't use the library nearly like I used to because I can find it online in my office, but there's a lot of times I can't get access to it. So I have to go down to the library and have the people that are down there, and they're very helpful and can get the stuff that I need to find. And that's,
Good.
yeah.
Ralph, you had a question?
Well, I guess my question has probably been answered. If we're just now going into this with UNT, what have we been using, or what have the doctors all been using prior to this?
We had pretty much an old-fashioned library where it's got, back in the day, whenever I had to go find something, we'd have to go down to the library, you'd have to get out the periodicals, you'd have to, they were all in stacks, and you'd find the volume that you needed, and then you would Xerox it, and then you'd have the paper in your hand. That's all now mostly electronically. We still have that down there, and I still occasionally use it because it's just some things I can find online, but a lot of things are not online. Unless you pay for those services. Well, the hospital's already doing it, so it's very beneficial from that standpoint. Yeah, it'll all be electronic here in the process.
Okay. Based on that discussion, any other questions for Dr. Rosini? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Warren.
Second.
Second by Mr. Reverend Emerson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much for
Yeah,
the
that's
discussion. I
good-
appreciate
good-
that.
Good points. Item number G, Bill. Frank, thank you very much. David, thank you for your input also. Thank you.
Warren, may it also be noted that you actually used the term A&M Law School. I know that was, boy, painful. I know that hurt.
You know, I hear it was well-established in 2013.
Yeah, very proud of you.
Point well made. Thank you, Ron. As you know, I have a son from there too.
Your beatings can stop at any time.
That's right. I'm well aware of that. Now, Bill, on a more serious note, thank you, your presentation.
I'm enjoying it. Good morning. This particular agreement is proposed to extend Sheridan's coverage for an additional year, as well as provide additional coverage and for regional anesthesia and pain management in all of our ORs, Monday through Friday, at no additional cost. I'd like your consideration and approval of that request.
Move approval.
I have a motion by Reverend Emerson, second by Dr. Weber. All those in favor say aye.
Thank you, sir.
Bill, thank you very much for your presentation. I think Diana's next. Item number H has to do with the urology. Good morning, Ms. Diana. Good morning,
Good
James.
morning.
Dr.
I
Johnson.
can have my compadre, Dr. Johnson, join me this morning, so that if you have questions I can't answer, he certainly can. We're here to request your approval of the contract between UT Southwestern Medical Center and Acclaim for urology services. This will be a significant increase over the current urology services that we have available to our district today. And I want to give you a little bit of background around the care that we provide today and what will be different with the new contract in this request. We have been understaffed in that service area for some time, and we've had great difficulty in recruiting additional support. When you have only one urologist and you're trying to recruit one of two urologists, most providers do not want to take call every other week in a very busy hospital like we have here at JPS. So we had been starting working with an opportunity to work with a larger group that could come in and help us cover our patient call as we would like. We currently have 1,200 referrals pending for our urology outpatient clinic. These would be consults. We average about 270 additional new referrals a month. We currently offer, with our existing urologist, 1 day of clinic a week here at our main campus. And we have a mid-level who also offers a half day of clinic a week at Maine. We do have a part-time urologist who is an Acclaim employee who works for us in Arlington, seeing only low acuity patients. Our patients wait about 90 or more days for their initial consult appointment, unless certainly they're urgent or need that care or come through the ED. That APP that we currently pay for, who works with our current urologist, sees mostly follow-up patients in the hospital and does some non-surgical patients in the clinic that half day a week. The new contract is a 3-year contract with UT Southwestern Urology. It includes the provision of 2 full-time urologists here who have been recruited and hired especially for JPS. Will be supported by 4 additional subspecialists so that our patients will have an opportunity to have the very best care here at JPS all the time, including a urology oncologist and others who have specialized skills and take care of the more complex patients. The contract does include support for advanced practice, 3 advanced practice professionals. The group will be training those professionals over a period of several months so that over time they will be able to work independently. Acclaim will hire the advanced practice professionals to support the service, and in time when they have billable work, Acclaim will bill and collect for those services and keep that in Acclaim. Initially, they will be covering first assist in surgery and assisting in clinic as they are brought up to speed. They are hiring new graduates, and so they will have a bit of a training and preceptor time before they can see patients on their own. The contract will support medical director leadership, call coverage, pay. Our current contract that our urologist is not exclusive to JPS. We do share him with another facility. So some of the call is done in the ED by our ED residents to temporize patients until that urologist can get here at times. This coverage will be exclusive to JPS, so that the patients will be covered by the appropriate level of care as they come. There are salary guarantees in this contract. Those will be reconciled annually against collections. for the 2 providers that were hired exclusively to expand service here at JPS. There are performance metrics, much like you would see in any of our agreements with our physician contracts. The team is committed. They've looked at our backlog, they've looked at our caseload, and they're committed to reducing wait times and improving efficiency for our patients as a part of their initial performance improvement metrics. They will initially start with 3 full-time days of clinic and 3 full-time OR days to begin to work on that backlog, and then as they grow and the APPs are trained, we would be offering 4.5 days of clinic in the next couple of months. We also have, currently our current contract is for we pay our current coverage, our current urologist and coverage fees, et cetera, close to almost a little less than $500,000 a year. We also pay an additional $600,000 in payment for our connection fee-for-service patients to that contract. In the new contract, we have an August 1st start date. We have some budgeted dollars that will be remaining for that against this contract. The initial contract will be for 2 months, August and September for this fiscal year. Some of the initial startup costs in that contract are some recruitment fees for the 2 urologists who will be covering our campus full-time, as well as startup for the nurse practitioners, et cetera. Based on our current connection payment with the group, we anticipate the salary guarantees will not be at all an issue because we currently pay almost that much in connection payments now. And we'll be looking against their net collection for all of the patients they have for their salary guarantees. So we're asking approval for that contract. The urology service would be starting in August of this year.
So, Diane, what do you think this does to our current 90-day wait?
We would pretty rapidly be able to decrease the 90-day wait. And please know that the current urologist works very, very hard. He schedules, generally we schedule about 80 patients in that clinic a day, which really is too many patients, right, to be seen. So we'll be able to
Work
sort of...
20 hours a week or 20 hours a day?
He works hard. He does work very, very hard. I don't want to take anything away from that. He works hard. So we'll be able to reduce our third next available pretty quickly, and we'll be able to begin to see that referral pattern settle down as our patients are taken care of. Probably, and James can speak to this clinically, a lot of our patients have kidney stones, extremely painful, right? Need to be taken care of pretty quickly. I mean, that's probably a common surgery. He does a great job of helping those patients initially, but I think we could get to a lot more patients a lot faster this way. So we're pretty excited about this. We have been trying to close the gap here for a long, long time, and so this is a great opportunity for our patients here in the network.
Any other questions for Diana? Hey, Dr. Johnson, we appreciate you being here, and obviously, Dr. Weber, this was discussed at a claim, and obviously with quality and all that, so thank you. Thank you for being here also. Yes, Dr. Ziegler.
Question, did we promise them anything in OR time?
They are working with our OR now on what their time looks like. They were here yesterday, as a matter of fact, so we're working that out.
Okay.
Yes. They're taking your time. I believe your time was at the top of the list. No kidding. All right. Yes.
And I would hopefully that issue gets handled, Dr. Ziegler, to everybody's satisfaction.
Well, everyone wants more OR time here, and it's just a difficult problem. We've only got so many rooms and so many hours in the day, and it would be, if we had another facility, that would be greatly appreciated, but we do what we can, but just everybody wants more OR time.
Well, we appreciate what you do, and I think the minutes probably need to reflect that if we had more facilities. But any other questions relative to this specific item for Diana or Dr. Johnson? If not, I'd entertain a motion. I have a motion by Mr. Petty. Second by Dr. Weber. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you very much, Diana. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
James, thank you. And then the next one, Diana, I think you're right there. It's actually the Patterson Dental Supply.
Digital X-ray equipment and sensors. So I'm here to ask your approval for release of budgeted funds to finally get our dental clinics into the digital world. Since we went live with Epic about 5 years ago, we moved everybody else to digital almost except dental. We have put this off for a couple of years in trying to find the best solution for managing those digital X-rays. And our IT team has been terrific in finally getting that worked out. So the cost is budgeted in capital funds for this year.
Any questions? A budgeted item that's in the budget? If not, I'd entertain a motion. Motion by Dr. Weber.
Second.
Second by Mr. Petty. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
James, Diana, thank y'all very much. Which brings us to item number J. Obviously, purchase agreement with Spock Inc. And David, it's all yours.
Thank you. This is a request to release some budgeted funds for an organization called Spoke. And Spoke offers a communication platform. We already use Spoke internally for all of our pagers across all of our physicians and campuses that we use. This is an enhancement to the Spoke communication system that we are using for online directory, physician call schedules, and eventually a mobile app with them so that we can do encrypted messaging between physicians when they want to consult on cases and so on and so forth. So what you have in front of you is that agreement. What I do want to say is on there, this is mostly capital funds. There is a little bit of OpEx, but what we have negotiated with Spoke is every dollar that we spend in OpEx with them will be reduced on our pager contracts moving forward so that we don't have any continual climb in that agreement.
And David, I know you probably addressed this, but this interfaces with all systems now, and as we move forward, you anticipate this would be an integral part of any other systems, communications, what we do across the entire district?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And from that perspective, so like when we have a patient in Epic and a call comes into our PBX, the PBX operators through this interface will be able to say, yes, I have that patient here, would you like to speak with them? And we can transfer them automatically into that. This will allow those interfaces to happen.
Gotcha.
Yes.
So full interface with
Yes.
all systems and anticipated systems.
You got it.
Anyone have any questions for David relative to this matter?
One for David.
Yes, Joe.
Did not know what this meant, David. It says in your plan alignment, communicate and if needed, escalate communications for non-responsive messages. I didn't know what that
No, that's a great question. I appreciate that because I didn't mention that. So one of the things that we are purchasing, this is a phased implementation, right? PBX and then the rest of JPS to be able to have the online directory and physician on call schedule. Phase 3 will be an opportunity for us to address critical values. So if, for instance, a critical value, which I know the physician staff is working on very hard right now from a processing perspective.
definition of
So a lab value that may, for an inpatient that is here, or an x-ray that comes in, that all of a sudden, we need to act on this. We need to medicate that patient, okay? So once we have those interfaces built and a critical value comes from our lab or x-ray system, we can then send that message to a physician, to the on-call physician that's in charge of that patient at that time. And if a response is not given within whatever thresholds we put, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, whatever that threshold is, we can then escalate that value to an attending or to a department chair or whatever we want to be able to do. So that's what that call escalation is all about.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Any other questions for David? If not, I'd entertain, and it's Spoke, like with an E on the end. I apologize.
Yes, that's okay.
Is there any other discussion? If not, I'd move for approval of Spoke's contract.
Move.
Motion by Reverend Emerson, second by Dr. Weber. All those in favor say aye. Thank you very much. I've been advised that item number K has been pulled at this time from the agenda, which would bring us to what you have listed as item number L, between Edwards Life Sciences, and I think Kathleen's going, yes, Kathleen. Yes. So we know we're going to save money because you have to present something to save us money.
I cannot take credit for this contract. I'm presenting this since Wanda could not attend today.
Okay.
This is with a contract with Edward Life Sciences, and this is for the purchasing and reduction in pricing for heart valves that are used in open heart surgery. It's a 3-year contract and allows us to put those valves on consignment so the individual physicians can choose them as needed based on the type of valve and the sizing. So this is asking for approval for a 3-year contract for one brand of heart valves.
I have a motion by Mr. Petty, a second by Dr. Weber. All those in favor say aye. All righty, item number M. Kathleen, if you would cover that also, please.
Yes, the next contract is for Philips Healthcare, and this is for a purchase of a radiology room to be placed in the new Northeast Medical Home. We actually bundled an RFP about 6 months ago for multiple units, and that included a previous contract that I brought forward for the jail and other locations. So this was a total bundle. And due to the timing with the Northeast Medical Home when they open, the vendor has agreed to store the unit or not send it to us until we're ready for it at no cost. The price will not increase. It will be the same price that they have agreed upon at this point in time. So this is approval for a budgeted capital item for the release of the funds for the purchase.
On behalf of Mr. Fisher, I would like to.
Because you know he would, so I have a motion by Mr. Petty.
For Harold Samuel. Second.
There you go.
Y'all should be working for a whole lot of other people. I have a second by Reverend Emerson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you very much, Kathleen. Thank you very much. And then the last item, number N.
It's from Siemens Healthcare, and this is approval to release the funds for, the capital funds for an MRI unit to be the third unit at the main campus. Currently, our outpatient is running with a 30-day backlog, and we're struggling on a day-to-day basis to manage the inpatients. This will give us a third unit. Contract is not including the construction component. Angie will come forward with that once the RFP is completed. So our total project is $3.2 million. This is the release of $1.4 million for the equipment. Siemens needs a large lead time in order to do the production on this unit so that it will be available at the time construction is complete.
When do you think that is, Kathleen? When do you think?
It'll be late this year.
Chair, any other questions? Just late this year. If not, I'd entertain a motion on item number N with Siemens. Reverend Emerson, have a motion. I have a second by Dr. Weber. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you all very much. Item number N. Kathleen, thank you very much. Which brings us to the next matter being any legal counsel comments or matters, Mr. Adams?
Mr. Chairman, let me make one comment. Consistent with the committee's instructions several months ago, as you know, posted to your website are contracts under $200,000. This is for the month of March. There were 23 contracts listed that were posted there for your information.
Okay. Appreciate that report. Is there any other business to come before the committee? If not, on behalf of Mr. Montgomery, I will say thank y'all very much. We stand adjourned. Thank you.